On this week's The Next Interview, you'll meet Kyle McDowell, a former Fortune 100 executive who walked away from corporate success to rediscover what leadership really means. Together, we unpack how his 10 WE principles can help you move from boss to leader, building trust, authenticity, and impact that lasts.
Great leaders don't guess where their systems break, they measure it. Grab the Empowerment Blueprint Toolkit to find your leadership blind spots and build real momentum. Download now at thenextinterview.com.
Welcome to the Next Interview Show. I'm Doland White, as the announcer mentioned, coming through the front door, and I am the host of the podcast. And I'm always honored to have amazing guests on the podcast. And today's conversation is no less of an honor to have Kyle McDowell on the phone. Shows my age. That's weird talking about being 72 years old. Age, phone. Nobody uses phone for this stuff anymore on the podcast. And we're going to spend some time talking about Kyle's book and talking about 10 principles that I really, really like, the WE principles. And we were talking a little bit before we aired out around the simplicity about keeping things easy in leadership. So Kyle, very, very first thing is there's a 1,000 other places you could be, and you're going to spend the next 40 minutes with me. Let's just call it what it is, the next 40 minutes with me. So I just want to tell you, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for working with me and helping the leaders I empower.
Dolan, man, get out of here. Thank you for having me. I'm really thrilled to be with you today. And I really enjoyed the conversation before you tapped record. You're doing really important work, man. So if I get a chance to be a part of that and maybe add a little bit of value to your audience, then pleasure is truly mine. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll start with, let me see if I can get my Kindle open here. Hang on, here we go. Shameless. We got to do a shameless plug first. There we go. There's the shameless plug right at the very top. But before we kind of get into the book, the book is Begin with We: 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence. And I have to read it because got to get the title right. That's very important. There's a journey that took you there, and kind of that path that you followed, and you've had a really interesting career, I think. So let's maybe take the first few minutes of the podcast for those who've not met you, just to kind of hear about your path and your journey. And then we'll get in. I want to get into the conversation. We'll talk about leadership and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah. Well, I would venture to guess that my career and the way I entered the workforce was really no different than just about every single person that listens to your show or watches your show. I entered the workforce with a tremendous amount of optimism. I wanted to make an impact. I wanted to be fulfilled. I wanted to kind of leave my stamp on this thing called corporate America. And by most accounts, I had what could be described as a pretty successful run. I spent nearly 30 years in the big corporate world and found myself leading tens of thousands of employees. I was responsible for multi-billion-dollar P&Ls at some household names in the U.S. and some of the biggest companies in the world, candidly.
Sure.
But man, I will tell you though, from the outside looking in, here's a guy that has checked a lot of boxes, making more money than I ever thought I would find myself making, greater kind of spheres of influence that I ever really dreamt of. But the only thing that matched those vanity measurements, because they really are just vanity metrics in many ways, was the level of apathy that I felt as I took on more and more responsibility. And man, I have to say, it is quite the gut punch when you wake up and dread going to the very environments that you created or that you had a real influential role in what those environments were like. It's a gut punch. But for me, where I found myself probably around year 22, 23, I was on the doorstep of a divorce, which ultimately happened. My health was not where it needed to be. It wasn't in very good physical condition.
Right.
And the apathy was so strong that I started to ask a lot of questions I had never asked before. But the one question that seemed to play out and ring more loudly than the others was, is there a better way? Is there a better way? Because I had accomplished these things that I set out to accomplish, but it left me feeling very, very different and disconnected from those emotions that I mentioned earlier. The optimism I had, the excitement, the energy. I just lost a lot of that. And this "is there a better way" question prompted me to really do some serious self-reflection and introspection. Is this what my career and my life, because we spend about 100,000 hours of our existence in this thing called work.
Right.
And I realized that number specifically, I was like, something must change. So I made a decision. I opted to step away from the corporate world at this point, and I wasn't independently wealthy. I couldn't just retire and go sit on a beach somewhere. I knew I had to go back, but I was very lucky. I was able to just kind of step away without a real plan. But I told myself, if I go back, and more appropriately, when I go back, it's got to be under a different set of circumstances that would allow me to be the leader I never had. I wanted to reconnect with those emotions. And it was about 11 days that had elapsed from my last day to me getting a phone call that really piqued my interest. Would I be interested in leading an organization of about 15,000 people, a $7 billion program?
Right.
And it was obvious to me in the conversations and in the round of interviews that I went through that there was an opportunity for a cultural reset. Now, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know exactly how I was going to get there. I just knew it was one of those, another gut check moment. It was like, hey, if you want to come back into this environment, do you have what it takes to be the leader that you've never had? Because I had this recipe. I knew how to get results.
Right.
I was a really good manager. I could get things done. I could deliver great results. But at what cost was a question I probably should have been asking. There it is. Dude, we said we were going to.
Hey, you went there first.
I did.
I'll get my hands up.
Yep. Well, you're next. And I was, I had this kind of this thought process that forced me to evaluate my approach, recognize maybe the things that I was not very good at, although from the outside looking in, looked like I had it all figured out. And this round of introspection told me that there is a better way, but I didn't know what it was. So I took the role. Long story, not quite as long. I took the role, and about 60 days in, I asked for the top 40 or 50 leaders of my newly inherited organization to all come together because I wanted to have this group in a room where I could do two things. And the first was I needed them to understand my level or my expectations of them. But more importantly, I wanted them to understand what they should expect from me. An approach I'd never taken before. It was like, historically, Kyle's approach was to step up in my shiny shoes and starch shirt and tell you about my fancy MBA and all of my experiences and accolades and how I was here to lead this team to a better place. Right. That was the recipe. I had the recipe, but I also knew where it left me historically. So the night before I was going to meet with these leaders, Doland, I was terrified. I didn't know. I knew this was a very important moment in my career because it was going to be more of the same or my chance to really establish what I now refer to as a leadership legacy.
Yeah.
And so it was that evening. I was in my hotel room, had my laptop open. I still had the the suit on from a dinner earlier that evening with the team. And it took me about 2 hours to come up with these 10 principles. And by the way, I didn't start off with the intention of creating any principles. I knew I needed some slides. I had to have something to talk to. Yeah. But I started to replay all of these scenarios throughout the previous 20 years or so that left me feeling a little less than whole. Left me feeling not so valued. And I also went through some scenarios of where I may have led others to feel that way.
Yeah.
Okay. I turned the page, man. And I was like, okay, so where have I had really great experiences? Where was I inspired, motivated? And it was through that internal dialogue that I came up with these 10 principles. After about 2 hours, that's really all I had on the PowerPoint was these principles, 10 sentences. They each began and still do begin with the word we. Yeah. And they were my approach, and my goal was to say, essentially, you guys know more about your jobs than I do. I was 60 days in. You guys have probably forgotten more about your roles than I know about what you do. and I knew I needed them. I needed them to be successful,
Yeah.
but I also felt like I could add a little value. But what I had really observed in a way that led me down this path that evening was most organizations do a really fine job welcoming someone to the team, new hire orientation. Here's how you do the job, your SOPs, like very, very kind of formulaic. But where I fell short and where I think most fall short is setting the same level of expectations for behavior, how we treat one another, the standards that we hold each other accountable to, not just me holding you, but us holding each other accountable to.
Yeah.
And that's where the 10 We's were birthed. That night changed my life because it's what ultimately compelled me to write my book, which immediately became a USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestseller. Dolan, I have to share with you, since you can relate to this process. When I decided to write the book, I told my wife, if I sell 1,000 copies, I'll be over the moon. It's my goal, 1,000 copies. We're doing nearly 1,000 copies a week now.
That's fantastic.
It's mind blowing to me, and I share that not from a vanity perspective. I don't want folks to misunderstand. No. I share that because it confirms for me that there are others who are hungry for that better way, and I may have just kind of found, at least for me, a better way. And I'm hearing from readers daily now about the impact that 10 We's are having on their journey as well. It's been really, really fun to be a part of.
I love that, and that's the. We were talking earlier a little bit, and we'll come back to this topic of ego. But when you're approaching that art of writing a book and telling the story, because I love the story about the 10 We's in the book and kind of how you crafted them and kind of where you got to with that. And it is, I guess, when you're not approaching it from an egoic perspective, from that position. It's amazing just to see the growth that occurs naturally, because I believe some people call it vibration, some people call it a thought process. There's a sense that comes along with it that says this content, this book was really intended to do one thing, and that was to help do what you're talking about, which is to kind of help with culture, help organizations make that shift. One of the things that I really liked about, and thank you for the story, I got a couple of notes about that. I want to ask you some questions about while you were talking. One of the things that I really like about the book is it's we. I'm blessed. I'm the son of a redneck and grandson of a redneck, originally from Alabama. And so my grandpa always used to tell me, boy, I was boy most of my life. Boy, there's I, me, my, and there's we, us, them. And you got to make a choice. Which one are you? Are you I, me, my? Is it about you? Or is it we, us, them? Is it about them?
Powerful.
Yeah. And I love that. And I never got it, right? There's a lot of other things I can't say because it'll get recorded and it'll be deemed inappropriate. But I love that. I love that concept. And what really kind of attracted me to the thinking around it was we, right? So if you're okay, I'm gonna hit the 10 just quickly, and then we'll come back. But the first one is we do the right thing. Second one is we lead by example. The third is we say what we're going to do. The fourth is we take action. Thank God. The fifth is we own our mistakes. The sixth is we pick each other up. The seventh is we measure ourselves by outcomes, not activity. The eighth is we challenge each other diplomatically, which is love radical candor. 9 is we embrace challenges. 10 is we obsess over details. Was I close?
Nailed it.
All right, good. But
you left out my two favorites though.
Which ones?
We number 8 and we number 9. We number 8 is we challenge each other.
Yeah.
We number 9 is we embrace challenge.
I love that. Love that. Didn't mean to skip them, but I probably skimmed right over the top of them. It's font about that big on my screen right now. So, but
hey, Dolan, before we move on though, I want to share. We are aligned here. I too was raised by a redneck, my dad, and I think I was actually more affectionately known as things that boy would have been a compliment. I think I was probably 12 years old before I realized my name wasn't a-hole. But that was the environment that I was raised in, and I'm grateful for it. So I just wanted to share. We have some commonality there as well.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, mine was was Jesus. My grandpa was Jesus.
Yeah. Oh, yep. Yep. Yep.
Like,
Yep.
like, wait, hang on. What are you
Yep.
calling me?
Yep.
Anyway, that's
That's awesome.
awesome. That's fantastic. So I want to go back to a couple things that you were talking about, and then I want to kind of lean in on one of the topics before we hit go and started the podcast. But I really like one of the recognitions was, when you started your career with the sense that, with the vim and fervor of making an impact. And I think that's a big part of human nature. We like to go home, particularly as men, the way we're wired, and be able to know that when I walk through the front door, I've had an impact. My day is something has happened in my day that's an impact. And I think there's a lot of confusion with leaders around the difference between activity, doing stuff, managing stuff, and impact.
Yeah.
And maybe we can start there just for a little bit, because I think for leaders, and as they're kind of looking at that, they're trying to figure it out. Well, if I'm doing a lot of stuff and I'm hitting my numbers and I'm doing all these kinds of, which is, there's things you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
As a leader in an organization, we cause momentum and we have outcomes we're driving towards. Kind of, maybe if you wouldn't mind sharing just a little bit in your thought around the difference between, what impact is and what kind of that legacy really means.
Yeah, I think it's important to answer that first with a little bit of context, and I know you can relate to this.
Yeah.
So I was a product of my environment. So I would bang my fist on the desk, raise my voice. Results matter more than anything. You have a sick kid, doesn't matter. See you Saturday. So that it was just kind of the way that it was the leadership, more like the boss-ship environment that I was exposed to. I didn't know any better. I didn't know there was a different way. And for me, it was only about results until I realized when I started to ask all these questions that I mentioned a little bit ago.
Yeah.
What a shot to learn that those that you thought had a healthy amount of respect for you actually fear you. That again is another gut punch. Because of that context and the way that I was kind of brought up in the corporate world, my kind of maniacal focus on results at all costs cost me a lot. And it cost me relationships, and it cost me connection, and it cost me bonds that kind of transcend the workplace. Now, and when I say things like that, I think there are a fair amount of people that say, "Oh, it's a little bit of a woo-woo conversation," and I go to work to make a paycheck, and I go home. And if that's your approach, but if that's your approach, if that's how you view your role, I don't blame you. I get it. I understand. But if you want to have an impact, which I think it's hardwired in us, as you say, we all want that feeling. We want to feel like we've added value to something. As a matter of fact, I boil it down very simply. I call it the ABCs of the employee value chain. We want to add value, we want to be valued, and if we're really lucky, the C is to connect the value. We want to connect the value that we've delivered to those that ultimately consume it.
I like that.
Man, if we're able to do that, we can really kind of almost quantify objectively the impact that we're having. And I will share with you, and I think this is illustrative of what I've missed out and where I am today. And if nothing else, hopefully members of your audience will find some value in this. The first 20-ish years of my career, I can count on one hand the number of people that I have some type of relationship with today that I'll have a quick phone call with, or maybe grab a coffee with, or just stay in touch with. Less than 5. The last decade of my career, that number is probably triple. Dolan, I still have one-on-ones with a couple of select folks that I haven't worked with in nearly a decade.
Right.
Because it transcended, what are you doing in this role today? They recognize I care more about them as the human and the path that they're on and what they're trying to accomplish in this existence. And right. I feel the same. They look at me as something much greater than a boss. They look at me as someone who can help them, but also I need help, right? I'm not omniscient. I need help as well. So for me to be able to stay in touch with with that group of folks has been really powerful to me, and it kind of confirms what I had hoped would happen. And that is making these connections. And by the way, I think what's so lost in so many folks is when you shift that aperture away from results at all costs into the people that are responsible for the delivery of those results. Two things happen. The results happen, they come, but they're secondary. Right. They come much more easily because I'm now working with someone I can trust. I know they're being authentic with me and I am with them as well. And we're aligned on how we get stuff done, not just what we're trying to get done, but how we get it done. And that's where the principles have been very powerful.
Yeah, I really like that, Kyle, because I think that's it's that leap into what impact really is. And it's funny you say that because I have one of those one-on-one coaching calls today at 4:00 with a kid that worked for me 3 years ago. I call them, everybody's a kid at my age. They're all kids. Young man, I'll call him a young man. But I like that. And the one of the other things that you leaned in on was work-life balance. It's kind of what I wrote down as you were talking about that, which is all about, when I talk to leaders, I tell them there's really three things you're going to do. You're going to do, manage, and lead. Do is just stuff you got to do. You're going to sit down and you're going to touch the keyboard. You're going to do stuff. Manage is resourcing. Manage is looking for an outcome, time tracking, blah, 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 blah. And leading is influencing people, right? Developing trust, creating autonomy, and where you scale your time, where you invest your time is where is the result that's going to govern your organization, your team, wherever you're investing. If you're investing in do and manage, your results are going to be small. If you're investing in leading, it's a longer tail, maybe. Right. Because there's some ease and elegance that has to occur there, but your outcomes are going to be exponential. It's going to change your life, their life.
So true. And
one of the things you were talking about, and I really like you were talking about that, was because you were on the edge of divorce and kind of where you were in your life, and when you were stepping back to look back and say, there's got to be more. There's got to be something better, something different. I think people get lost in that phrase, Kyle, around work-life balance, because there is no work-life balance. There's only life. And work is part of it. Being married is part of it. All that, there's all these pieces that, taking your truck out of the driveway periodically is part of it. I have a truck that never leaves my driveway too, by the way. So I love that you kind of lean in on that, because I also believe without that kind of right thinking or of authenticity, you're out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're out of balance, you're not going to be effective with the people that you work with and serve. One of the things you mentioned a little before we started talking was also too kind of your shift from boss to leader. So as you were kind of thinking through, if you're okay, I'd like to explore that for a minute or two.
Absolutely.
And then another dynamic around that I like to talk about. But as you were kind of shifting from boss to leader, which was that do manage, now to leader, what, I guess the prompts, what were the prompts that kind of took you into that? What did you do? What did you do well? What did you not do well? Kind of how did that work? And then the last of the 9-pound question is, when you're leading a team, because I've had an opportunity to work with large organizations as well, when you're leading that size of a team, that influence to create that culture, there's a difference between climate and culture. To implement that culture, it's a little bit of a different animal. So boss to leader, culture, the 3 steps. There you go.
Yep. So for me, the transformation from boss to leader is never over. It's never over. My approach to being a boss or a leader is always under a microscope. I just happen to start putting it under my own microscope, because as you know, if you're leading people, if you have really any level of authority, in air quotes, folks are talking about you at their dinner table. They're talking about the way you treated them. They're talking about how you inspired them or belittled them. So for me I had to start to look at my own approach to these things, how I handled myself in a one-on-one, how I led a staff meeting. the message and the energy with which I would approach a town hall. And I realized that I had this tendency to this need, and I didn't realize it at the time. And I realized that when these questions started to become so palpable, was that I led in a way that was very much driven by my ego. I had to be the smartest guy in the room. I had to have the right answers. I couldn't be challenged, which of course led to this feeling of apathy, because I ended up alienating those around me, all at what I thought was the right approach to being this authoritative, respected leader. And boy, was I wrong. So when I realized the role that my ego was playing and my inability to be vulnerable to those that I was leading, it was like a wet blanket, man. It was, and I share that with the caveat that I mentioned a moment ago, that it's never over, because, and that's why I had to call out those two very important we's. We challenge each other and we embrace challenge, because those were the two that I was the worst at. I couldn't be challenged. I think transformation in any walk of life, man, whether it's leadership, you pick it, any other topic, it must start with an evaluation, this self-reflection of where we are, and where do I want to go, and what's required between where I am and where I want to go, and am I courageous enough to take that on, recognizing that it's not a one-time decision. I tell folks, if you want to be the leader you never had, it's not just a one-time decision. You have to live that decision every day, every interaction of every day. Because again, somebody's going to be at home talking about you that evening. You write the script, what they're going to say, but you have to be aware that these things are happening. And if you're showing up just to give orders and get results, you're not going to be aware of those things. So I had to come to terms with my ego, and it's an everyday thing. And then when we talk about leading, at scale, so I remember I was probably, I at the age of 25, I led about 600 people.
Okay.
I had no idea what I was doing. Quite the imposter. But when I went from 600 to close to 1,000, and there was just like this steady incline of the workforce, the size of the workforce that I was leading. Sure. And I told myself early on, I was not going to change who I was. I wanted to be the same person, whether I was leading a team of 10, 600, or 15,000. And I think that is, by and large, a fair approach. I think it's also a bit naive, because what I didn't understand was the level of impact I needed to have on those closest to me in my circle when I'm leading, 10, 15,000 people, because they're the ones that are going to carry the message when I'm not in the room.
Right.
So, obviously selecting the right members for your team is incredibly important. It's probably the most important decision you make as a leader, is getting the right team aligned and getting them around you. I recognized when I started to really lead thousands and thousands of people around the world, it was going to be important to make sure that I had really tight connections with those that I interact with the most, because I'm relying on them to carry the message. And the only way they would carry the message is if they saw me living the message.
Right.
You can't just step up and say, I'm a we-oriented leader. Here are these great principles. They're going to change all of us. Let's just trust me. Everybody subscribe. Let's move forward. When I introduced the principles, I would say about half the audience was very receptive, optimistic, excited. But there was also a fair amount of folks in the room that thought I was full of it. And I had to earn that. I had to earn that trust. I could say it all day long, but they had to see me embrace challenge. They had to see me living these principles every single day before they were going to carry that message as well. And to me, that's the biggest difference between leading a smallish team to leading bigger and bigger teams, is the importance of the connections with those that you work with and see more often than anybody else.
Yeah. I love that, Kyle, because I think it is about leadership is a demonstrated skill, right? You can, to your point, you touched on it earlier. I spoke on this last week a little bit around, you can claim authority can be given to you. People can give you a title and authority happens. Yep. Leadership is a different thing. Leadership is a trust-bound experience. And I think it's really what you've talked about. And for those of you listening to the podcast, on your screen somewhere, there's a little round button that has a 30 or a 60 next to it. Push that button and go backwards. and listen to what Kyle was just talking about earning deep content, Kyle, about earning trust. And one of the key messages in that is when you're leading at scale is you got to live it, you got to be it, and you have to be it. You said this word a little while ago, and one of my favorite laws in the universe is authenticity can't be faked.
Mm.
So when you show up and you show up in your authentic self and you're leading that because I can't count on one hand the number. I can count with like 2 hands and 2 feet and 2 toes and every other piece of anatomy I'm gifted with to account with the number of times I sat in a meeting in my career and heard that leader in the room say, "Trust me.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to do," knowing that their needle, they were pushing to the green and they were going to live in the red.
Oh.
And inevitably the team would leave and we would kind of get together and I would be in these conversations with the team because I would be reporting up to this person in those early days. I still have a boss. After 40 years, I have a CEO. But anyway, but as we're kind of heading into that and thinking that, and I think there's a mentality that occurs on the team, Kyle, where they kind of go, "This too shall pass."
Yep.
This is just another one of those bullshit things that
initiative. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's another initiative. This is going to pass. I'll wait it out. So I'm going to look busy. I want to go back to, and I love the fact that when you presented the wheeze, right, and you're working with teams, because when you're working with teams and presenting these, it is the naysayers that I enjoy the most. Because there are the people in the room that are going to go, "Yeah, I don't get it." When you're working with those folks, other than living it and demonstrating it, what for leaders that's going to happen? Half the room is going to say, "I'm in." Half the room is going to say, "Bullshit."
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance that? Because at the same time, you've still got to maintain momentum and move forward. There's things that have got to occur.
Right on. When I introduced the principles that morning in Lawrence, Kansas, it was obvious to me there was a fair amount of energy from a good portion of the room. I would break the remaining 50% down into 2 cohorts. The first being, and they're probably equally weighted as well. The first being, "Boy, this sounds great." It's kind of like, "But we'll see." And then the remaining quarter of the room, the second group of that cohort of 50%,
Sure,
is what you said is, "He's full of shit. He's full of shit." And they didn't trust anything that I had to say and didn't really want to hear it. And it was obvious. There was a woman in that group, in that second cohort, that was exceptionally difficult. She happened to be a direct report of mine. She also is brilliant, really good at her job, really good.
Yeah.
And when I sensed the pushback, and it wasn't subtle. My favorite example is I asked her for a workbook, an Excel workbook. I was new to the role, and I wanted to learn. So there was a pricing workbook that had a lot of information that I thought would be really great for me to kind of poke around different tabs, see the references, how this stuff comes together, because I was new.
Sure.
And she sent me a screenshot of this workbook, which is not helpful. I don't know how anybody that's ever opened Excel would tell you a screenshot ain't going to cut it.
No.
So I was a little frustrated. The old boss in me wanted to slam my fist on the desk. And I said, "You know what? Actually, I really need the whole workbook because I want to do some." So I restated the need.
Yeah.
Next email came and there was one tab in the workbook. All the other tabs were gone and everything was hard coded. It's like, this is not helpful at all, man. Can you please send me the workbook? And it was that moment between stimulus and response, is probably the first time, or at least the most memorable time for me, that I recognized she wasn't challenging me because she's just a jerk. She's challenging me because she'd been burned by guys in my role or gals in my role. She had been burned by previous bosses.
Oh, interesting.
Who expressed that, "I'm here for you. My door's always open." All those, the typical cliches.
Yeah.
And and to the heart of your question, how do you get those folks on board or get them aligned with the messaging? The only way, and this was the case with Julia, the only way was for me to live it. I couldn't just pound my chest and say, we're we oriented, let's follow the 10 we's. I had to live it. So with Julia, when I got that last one, the last email with just the tab, I was like, I really need this workbook. And I know it sounds like a silly story, but there's a parenthetical here that is really powerful to me anyway.
Yeah.
This interaction and meeting her and the pushback she gave me was 2017. I haven't worked with her in 6 years. We still have one-on-ones.
Oh, that's awesome.
She's one of my tightest, closest colleagues. I think the world of her. And as I said, she's brilliant. And she actually helped me name the book. And I shared this story, man, because had I taken my classic approach, and I think it's the approach that most bosses would have taken, it's like, send me the workbook.
Yeah.
No more screenshots, no more tabs. You know what I asked for, send it to me. Instead of taking a step back and wondering why I'm being met with such resistance here, she was skeptical. And the only way to kind of get her on board, and by the way, getting someone on board does not mean we're going to go have beers, doesn't mean you have to like me, but it does mean we have to treat each other with a fair amount of respect, acknowledge each other's issues, our foibles, the things that we're not good at, and try to help each other. And I think the way that I reacted then, I'm incredibly proud of this many years later. We just had a one-on-one last week. We're talking career stuff, what she's going to do next, the challenges she's facing. So I think that's a commentary to say, you can tell people all day long the kind of leader you are. You can tell them how you're going to be in their corner. You can say whatever you want for that matter. Doesn't matter until they see you live it. And that for me has been the lesson that I have carried with me since that interaction. And it's paid off. 10, 20, 30 fold, it's paid off.
Yeah. I love that, dude. I think, there goes. There's the second. There's dude number 2 right there. But no, you know what? I think that's really important, because I think there is that that gap between react, respond.
Amen.
Right. That occurs, I think, in a leader's mind. And it's like I asked once, and we've all, as leaders, I've had teams test me.
Sure.
And one of them I'm talking to tomorrow. One of my biggest challenges was a young guy named Bobby Russell, and he was an ex-Navy SEAL. But this is your podcast. I'll tell his story another day. But he was not gonna help me in any way, shape, or form. And I finally got in the car one day and went out to where he was, and parked my car and went in to see him and sat down and said, so I just wanted to come out and say hi, introduce myself, let you know I'm a human. And is there anything you need from me that I can do to help you?
Probably the most powerful question a boss can ask a member of their team. That's what a leader would ask. What do you need from me, man?
Yeah, it was, and I was young and stupid enough to not know that was a good thing. So we're still good friends to this day. But
how many years has that been, Doland?
Oh, goodness gracious, Kyle. It's, oh my gosh, probably 22, 23 years now.
Right on. Shout out Bobby. Very cool.
It's been a while. Yeah. My pal, Bobby Russell. But it's one of the things I think that's very important that I don't want to lose track of in your story, is the why. And I think to your point, as a leader, right, it's easy to kind of slip back into boss mode. The boss mode mentality says, hey, I asked for this. Give it to me.
Yep.
What is it that's unclear? I need to see it by tomorrow morning at 9.
Yeah. Without
stepping back and asking that why. Why is this? And I love that, because it's funny, because one of the things I talk about is worthy ideals. Everybody has a worthy ideal. There's a worthy ideal that the organization's working towards. We all have a worthy ideal, the thing that we're moving towards in our lives as individuals. and it's all unique. And I think a lot of time as leaders, we lose track of understanding the fact that there is something in that person's mind, life, that they are working towards. I loved your comment around, people talk about us as leaders at the dinner table because we have that impact. Our impact is way beyond the hours we get to spend together. It's wives, kids, husbands, aunts, uncles, all the different things that come along with it.
What a
When
privilege. What a privilege. What a
Well,
privilege.
it's amazing and that's why I think it's really very, very important for those that we lead that are directs and those that we have an opportunity to be connected with in our organizations, to know them, to know their wife's name, to know their kids' names, to know them. If we don't know that, then we can't understand them. And if we don't understand them, we can't do what we're supposed to do, which is to help.
And how is trust ever fostered? It's impossible. It's impossible.
Can't be.
You would not. It can't be, right? So you talked a bit about authenticity earlier, which is, we could spend hours on the topic of authenticity.
Yeah.
I think we would agree on two things. Most, if not all, there are exceptions. I don't want to say all. We come to the workplace, obviously, we got to make money, right? We have commitments, we have obligations.
Sure.
Right? But if we're going to spend 100,000 hours of this existence in this thing called work, if we marry that with this, and again, I think we'll agree on this, most people don't show up to do a bad job. They show up with those same emotions that I talked about at the top. It's like they want to have an impact. They want to make an impact. They want to feel valued.
Well said.
Right? So if we can agree on that, and then and if we agree, and I think so, that trust is probably the most foundational and fundamental component between what separates a boss from a leader is that their ability to be trusted, to engender trust. So I boil it down just like this, man. Authenticity plus relatability equals trust. If you can see my authenticity on full display, and that doesn't mean I'm always happy. It doesn't mean I'm Pollyannish. It means I'm being authentically me. If we're staring a challenge in the face and I'm worried about it, you're going to know. If I'm concerned about a new market threat or competitor, you're going to know. That's authentic. I'm not going to put on a smiley face when there shouldn't be one. Right. And the relatability component, I think, is just equally important. Is got a sick kid, I can relate. Got an ailing or a sick parent, yep, I can relate to that as well. Right. So it's these human connections and these human experiences that allow us to be relatable to one another that helps us forge this trust. And without it, if I can't relate to you, if I hold these standards, these high standards that results matter more than anything else, that's not relatable. If I can't relate to the fact that you've got a real life outside of this office, that I want you to be your best in all things that you do. And then I combine that with this, what I call, it's a human obligation. We're wired to want to help one another. We're wired to want to receive help. I've never quite understood. I get it, but I don't quite understand it though. Why, when we enter the workplace, this, for someone else to win, someone must lose mentality takes over. And when we shed that and we care more about the people to our left and right and the impact that they want to have and helping them find fulfillment, man, the work experience becomes so different. It transcends anything you might have thought you were there to do. And the impact is just really beautiful to be a part of.
Yeah, that's an authentic we.
For sure.
Just to put it together. That's authentic we. When we're in that spot, and the short answer is 100%. Love that. Because I think when we're in that spot, then we're truly leading. Then we're in a position to where now we've moved from leader. Are the other things that we got, the do manage stuff? Yeah, that stuff is going to happen.
Of course, never goes away.
Yeah, there are things that occur there, but we're in that mode where we're able to build that trust, to be authentic. And that, when I talk about authenticity, I talk about accountability, transparency. There's a bunch of things that go into that. Mm-hmm. And being willing to be vulnerable and have that conversation with your team to say, hey, look, I'm a little concerned about this.
Yeah.
And candidly, I have no clue how we're going to answer this question.
Yep. No problem with that. Yep.
But I got 50 other people in the room that are much smarter than I am, and let's start working on this, and we'll figure it out. And the goal is, when we leave here, we got some sort of a plan.
Aligned.
Is it going to work? Unlikely, but
Don't know.
We'll find out.
That's why we're going to embrace challenge. We're going to take the challenge on. We'll be galvanized by it, and we'll be better for it. We're not going to bat 1,000. And when we approach those conversations in that way, not this like starched, I know this goal's hard. This is going to be a tough one for us. I have faith, and you walk out of the room. It's very different than saying, right? It's very different than saying, man, I'm so happy I have this group in this room with me with this challenge in front of us, because together we're going to be right or we're going to be wrong, but we will be together. And I think that creates this sense of, hey, we're in this together. There's no leadership gap. He doesn't operate on a different pedestal than we do. We're in this thing together. Got to be here on a Saturday. I'll be here with you. Right. It's the things that say that we're on the same team, and I'm not standing above looking down. We're doing this together.
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned that, because that's impact. That's when impact occurs. And I'm a firm believer on, look, if you're asking your team to do it, you need to be prepared to do it too.
Yeah, no doubt.
I love that. My favorite thing I used to tell my team all the time was, if you're in for a Saturday, I'm around, and I'm going to be sending you guys Domino's pizza coupons. And I'm not going to let you go hungry, and I pay for it. Business doesn't pay for it. Anyway, we'll get into those. Another conversation. But when you're, and we're way out past our mark, so we'll go a few more minutes. But if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
But as you're, when you're doing the work, let's talk a little bit about the work that you do and where this is taking you, because you've, and I love the arc of your career Kyle, when you talk about boss to leader, large teams, which is leadership at scale, which is an art and nuance in and unto itself when you're dealing with leadership at scale. But one of the most important things in leaders, if you get a chance to go back and listen to this podcast again, there's a lot of great content, Kyle. One of the things that comes out of leadership is at scale is it doesn't matter if you're leading 2,000 or 3 people. The same laws apply.
It's just people.
It's just people.
It's just people, dude. It's just people.
And it's that simple.
It really is.
Just stay with the people.
It really is. But like we talked about, simple does not necessarily mean easy.
No. So let's unpack that just for a moment, and then we'll kind of duck off into what you do, and we'll wrap the podcast up. But
sure.
So that's an easy term to confuse, simple and easy. Well, if it's simple, anybody can do this. Right.
Those words could not be more different than one another. Look, we know, losing weight is simple. It really is. We know we got to burn more calories than we take in. It's really that simple. Is it easy? Absolutely not. No. Learning a second language, or learn how to play the guitar, or any new skill. And I truly believe leadership is a skill. And we're all better off for it by investing time and energy into that skill, just like anything else. All simple concepts, simple notions, simple approaches, but living it every single day, especially when no one else is there to hold you accountable to it. Setting your standards, living those standards, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, is a very different animal. So when I created these principles, I knew in concept, incredibly simple. No one's going to refute them. But I had 2 things in mind that I think kind of moved me forward with these principles and led me to the place I'm in today. And those thoughts were, in collection, these 10 principles are much more powerful than any one on their own. And the fact that we're being overt and really conspicuous about these are our behavioral standards. This is not the what, this is how we get things done. And if I'm going to hold you accountable to them, I better be ready to be held accountable as well. And it's easy to say those things. But when Julia challenged me, I didn't have to. I could have barked. I could have barked right back at her. Yeah. I could have It could have taken all kinds of aggressive action.
Easily.
Including
Yeah.
saying you're no longer welcome on this team, that type of stuff. That would have been the easy path. So it is leading with intention and trying to create an impact and leave a place, and more importantly, a group of people better than they were before you met them, is not easy. And it requires an inordinate amount of time as compared to being just a boss. I love the way you frame it with do and manage, right? And I love how you kind of rounded out that leader portion, because it does take a lot longer. The tail is incredibly long. And you may not know for months, if not years, if you're having the impact that you want to have, because it does take so long, and it's not a light switch.
Right. Yeah. It is much longer. It is a much bigger, longer process. But I do like your comment though, Kyle, around, when you put together the we's, right? This sounds simple, but it's not easy.
Mm-mm.
The easy is making up, and as leaders, when things go wrong inside of organizations, I start with a mirror.
Doland, there's a concept in the book that I've created called the mirror of truth.
There you go.
Which is very similar to where you're going with this. And that is the hardest thing. One of the hardest things a boss trying to transform into a leader must address is, okay, we got some breaks. Things aren't going well. Maybe I got this shitty culture. What role did I play in all of this? And what role must I play to get us out of it? Without that, I'm pointing fingers, and that's easy to do. Sure, let's change the makeup of the team. Let's freaking fire everybody. You're going to be in the same situation in a number of months.
Yeah, it's a matter of time.
That's right.
Yeah, at that point in time, it's death. It's death and taxes. It's going to occur.
That's good. It's going to occur. Right on.
Yeah. So I want to and thank you for that insight around easy and simple and kind of the gap between the two. I want to talk about just a little bit about your work, what you do, how you serve leaders. I will recommend for the leaders listening to the podcast, go find the book. And for those of you who are listening to the podcast the first time, I don't recite links and URLs and all kinds of stuff in the podcast, because hopefully you're driving and I don't want you reaching for a pencil. Focus on where you're supposed to be going. They'll all be in the podcast. They'll all be in all the promotional material that comes along. It's all there. And there's a new guest page and all kinds of stuff going on. But the book is Begin with We. 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence. Go get the book. One of the most powerful tools that we have as a leader, it's a really simple rule taught to me by this old guy named Bob Proctor. Stay in the study. And we stay in the study as adult leaders, male, female, by going and picking up content and reading the content. And because we're not in school, we don't have to read the book from like page 1 to page 356. We can pick out the things that we need to know now.
Yeah.
And go get this book, because the book is built that way to help you pull out. We say what we're going to do. What the hell is that? Pull that out and put it into practice. When you're working with your clients, just my recommendation, go get the book. When you're working, an honor to have you here. When you're working with your clients and the work that you're doing in the world, let's talk a little bit about that. Who do you like to work with? And what do you do?
I can answer in a slightly different way than you asked it. I would rather share who I don't enjoy working with and who I really guard against working with.
Good.
So I work with, it's industry agnostic, and it is size agnostic. I find myself working with nonprofits to Fortune 100 firms and everywhere in between. The group that I try to avoid is the group that wants to start a cultural transformation initiative. Either they've had an employee engagement survey, or they've had some fancy consultants come in and say, boy, you really got to work on the culture of this place. And they say, well, this guy's got a best-selling book. I think the weed principles, the 10 we's, are really powerful. Let's basically outsource it to him. And I can sense that usually in the first one or two discovery calls. I am a box check. I'm an initiative.
Yeah.
And I've turned down and will continue to turn down business that appears to have that slant.
Good.
Where I really enjoy and get my energy from is the group that is aware enough to know that what's going on now is not ideal. There might be a better way. For me, it was asking the question, is there a better way? I had to come up with this better way overnight before I met with this group of leaders.
Sure.
It happened to work out. I had an epiphany that evening.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of folks struggle with, what is that better way? As you know, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of leadership books on Amazon or elsewhere around the world, right? There's just so many of them. And I've found a lot of them are written by academics, really smart people, but maybe have not really led at scale or managed a group of people at scale. So I just thought it was important to create a book that drew from my experiences, but also could be relatable to folks, regardless if you're an entry level person leading someone for the first time, or whether you're CEO of a big organization. So I avoid those that are trying to check the box. I want to find, and I've been very, very lucky since the book came out to work with a lot of people that come from cut from a similar cloth. It's that they recognize there's a better way. They want to reconnect with those emotions that I think we all brought to the workforce. And it varies. One of my favorite stories is, and one of my biggest clients, candidly, started with an HR generalist who recognized that there was something inside of her culture, her organization, that needed a bit of a shot in the arm. And she reached out, emailed, hit me on my website. We put together all kinds of stuff together, did a keynote there and a bunch of other stuff. And I share that story because it's not
Sure.
If you're a leader inside of an organization and you sense or you're hungry for a better way, don't wait. Don't wait for those guys. Don't wait for, air quotes, leadership or anyone from this ivory tower to come to you to tell you, here's the better way. You've got to do the work yourself. You've got to figure out what that better way is for you. And for me, it was establishing my leadership principles, my unshakable standards, the things that I want to be held accountable to. By the way, those are also the same standards I lead my personal life with as well. And that was never the case before. And it certainly wasn't my plan, but I found myself in this role feeling like a hypocrite. I was leading one way and I'd come home and not do the right thing.
Right.
So those are the types of engagements I get really excited about. Most of my time today is spent on stage. I do one or two, depending on the month, maybe 3 keynotes a month, usually in person, occasionally virtual. And everything else, every other waking moment is really spent trying to promote this book, to get the word out there. I mentioned to you the numbers that we're doing now, which is telling me there's momentum. There's a real momentum for this better way. And I think it's the right book at the right time.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And I love that, by the way. It's one of my favorite things about coaching when we step into coach is a couple of things that you talked about. And I'm going to echo, leaders, when you're working, you can't do it alone. If you're under the impression as a leader that you can go do it alone, you're mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Find a trusted advisor to work with. And I love your attitude around that, we're not going to know all the answers coming through the door, but we're going to figure it out.
Amen.
And we figure it out based on our experience. Because there's 1,000 books on how to do stuff by some really brilliant people. And it's the art and nuance of great coaching, great helping, consulting with clients is what pieces matter and which pieces really get you to the result that work. And we're not for everybody. I know I'm not for everybody. By far. Yes. By far.
Why would that?
Yeah, it becomes apparent pretty quickly. Yeah, I'm not your guy. So we'll move into the I mentioned you. We're gonna this is the unelegant ending of the podcast. This is where a couple of things. The very first thing I want to do is I want to go back to like we started at the beginning of the podcast. I just want to take a moment and thank you for a really good conversation.
Thank you, Doland.
This has been really good. I love the insights, love the experience that you're bringing, love your passion to bring, even if it's not you, to bring a better method, a better belief system, a better structure out to the business world and out to leaders that they can, because it does transcend. We didn't get into it, but it does transcend what we do in business with what we do in life.
That's right.
And so thank you for doing that, for being a part of my mission, for what I'm working on, and grateful to have you here and make a new friend and have a great conversation on the podcast.
And I'll echo that with my sentiments from when we first jumped off. And you're doing really important work. You got an audacious goal of 1 million leaders, and if I can play a role in that, man, my cup is filled. So thank you again.
Thank you. I figure at 72, I got at least another 6-7 months I can try to get it done. So the last part is, look, when you're listening to the podcast, 2 things I ask: give the podcast a know, like, share, or follow. It has nothing to do with vanity numbers.
Right.
The way technology works is with comments and shares on all of the platforms, because there's a scad of platforms out there. It elevates the podcast so that it can be seen. That elevation serves one mission, which is to empower 1 million leaders. So if you learn something from this podcast today, and you know another leader who could learn something from Kyle, or send them Kyle's book, just help that other leader become a better leader. Through that process, we're changing the lives of families. We're changing their life. We're creating a better economy. We're helping people move to their worthy ideal. There's a bunch of things that happen. So share this with another leader. Help them be better at what they do. That is our responsibility, to make people better, to help people improve.
Well said.
So, on that note, thank you for being here. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the podcast this week. I'm Doland. This is the Next Interview Show podcast. See you next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to the Next Interview Show. If today's conversation gave you something to think about or something to act on, follow the show. And share this episode with a leader you know who's ready to step up, because empowered leadership isn't a solo sport.